Good evening. Good evening. I just want to just say thank you guys again for rocking with your boy. I'm truly excited. Looking forward to tonight's episode. We on another episode, and I want to welcome you guys back to the Conversation 9-8. It's good to be back on, and I just want to thank you guys so much because it means a lot to me for your continued support. And we're just looking forward to another episode today to get started. And just wanted to take some time out to say hey to everybody out there. I know a lot of people getting out of school for the summer and all of that stuff. So, hey, shout out to everybody for that. But again, man, I'm excited and thank you guys so much because tonight it's going to be another episode. We're on episode 140 episodes, been going strong. And I'm just thankful for the opportunity to keep doing this, and I'm thankful for the continued support that I get from you all. But again, want to send a shout out to my kids, man. I'm proud of all of them. Chandler, I love you. Chance, Robert, and Nia. Just send a shout out to you guys. You guys mean the world to me, and I'm very proud to see you guys grow in the areas of where I see that you grow in. But again, I just wanted to just thank you guys. We're going to get right into it, though. Make sure that you let me know where you're tuning in from. Make sure you share this, and look forward to having you guys on with me tonight. Good afternoon to you, Mama. Thank you so much for what you do for me. I appreciate you. I know last week, Father's Day was last week, so send a shout out to all the fathers. Love you guys. Thank you guys for what you do. Thank you for what you do for your families. Thank you for what you do for your community. And I just want to just take this time to celebrate you all because you guys definitely mean the world to the world. So I don't want to take that lightly, but we're going to get right on with this. Looking forward to the conversation tonight. Was in meditation and asking God for clarity on what we was going to talk about tonight. And hey, this is what we came up with. And again, make sure you let me know. Tune in. Make sure you let me know where you're watching from. This is an interactive podcast. So looking forward to the dialogue and the back and forth dialogue that we have a conversation about relevant topics from a Christian perspective, but also from a logical perspective. And topics that not too many people that I see content that's being talked about that I feel is relevant and necessary to talk about. But besides all of that, man, we won't be before you long tonight, but we're going to kick this thing off. We're going to talk about overcoming the fear of dealing with yourself and making time to deal with you. And the reason why I wanted to discuss that, because if we really think about it and be honest about it, there's a fear that all of us will have to overcome to deal with the reality of who we are as a person. And sometimes that reality, it can be good. And many times in our lives, that reality won't be so good. That reality will be fearful because we know that there's areas and things in our lives that we may need to improve, that we may need to address. But it becomes fear come in and anxiety come in because we don't know that's all we've been comfortable with. That's all we may have known. So we become fearful to address it. But there's times that we're going to have to overcome that fear to deal with ourselves and not only address it, but we're going to have to make the time and put forth the time, energy, and effort to deal with it, to address it, so that we can come out and be a better person on the other side. That we're just going to have to do that because it can get to a space, right? When we're talking about fear, right? One of the biggest fears that we have to overcome with dealing with ourselves is the fear of accepting the reality of who we are as a person, accepting that reality. Because if you think about it, most of the time we put forth a lot of time, energy, and effort to project ourselves, to project who we want, the ideal of who we want us to be known as, instead of accepting and dealing with the reality of who we are. And that's why we can see so much conflict that come with that, because when we invest that much time, energy into projecting the ideal of who we are instead of embracing the reality of who we are, that conflict comes in because what we will start to see is we will never find peace on the inside because we will always be in the battle between knowing who we are on the inside, but then putting that energy and effort on making sure we are pleasing other people because we want them to see us a certain way, right? But we want them to see us a certain way because that's what we have built our identity on. And I like to use this analogy with this, and this is an analogy, I spoke about it before, but one of the things, one of the things that I love about reading the Bible and the different nuggets that God would give to those who choose to study, but that I'm one who chooses to study and believe in the Bible. But in the story of the man that was at the pool, right, of Bethesda, and the guy was there for 38 years. And for 38 years, he was waiting for somebody to put him into the pool after the angels came in and stirred the pool, because people used to get in the pool to get healed. But the amazing thing to that, when he encountered Jesus, right, the story says in the Bible that Jesus didn't tell him, hey, put him in the pool. Jesus said, hey, do you want to be made whole? And the guy said he wanted to be made whole. And Jesus said, take up your bed and walk. And the symbolism of that bed was the identity in which he was known by, because he invested all of that time waiting on somebody else, and Jesus empowered him to do that for himself. And the thing I like about that, and this was, he became known by the bed. See, he had his place there. The people in the public place knew him by his ailment, knew him by what he wanted to be, right? But that wasn't what he truly wanted or desired on the inside. So what he truly wanted and desired on the inside was to be healed, was to be made whole, right? And a lot of times the thing about it, when the fear of dealing with yourself is, right, I think that, and I use that analogy right now with myself in this aspect of using that analogy, but analogy that correlates to a lot of us and what we deal with on a day-to-day basis. Many things that we have or we deal with, we are afraid to address it because we are afraid to pick up our bed. We are afraid to change the narrative of the investment that we made to have other people to believe or think we're a certain way. So that's why it becomes so fearful to overcoming the fear to deal with yourself, because guess what? We know we deal with that internal conflict. Many of us deal with that internal conflict of, we know we need to change in this area. We know we need to grow in this area, but we have invested so much time, energy, and effort so people to know us this way. But we become scared because guess what? One is fear of the unknown. The other thing is we scared because we don't want people to feel like we're a fraud. But the reality is, the conflict is, we know we are fraud on the inside because it conflicts with what we truly know we should be doing. And that fear holds us, it imprisons us. And a lot of times, once we get to that space, we'll realize people didn't really care that much in the first place. People didn't really care that much in the first place. We got some comments I want to get to. What's going on, Kevin? You tuning in from Grovetown, Georgia. Hey, good to see you, brother. Miss Pastor, how you doing, Miss Geraldine? Good evening, good afternoon to you. What's up, JoJo? Hey, love you too, cuz. Miss Geraldine said this. She said, so that means time for ourselves is not a problem when we say no when it comes to others. No, listen, and I talked about this before, but it is so important for us to learn to say no in the efforts to especially when it comes to dealing with you. See, a lot of times what we do is we will find ourselves, and I even found myself, to a space to where when we don't deal with ourselves, we try to overcompensate those things of our unaddressed issues by meeting other people's needs, to the point to where we will run ourselves ragged and we will deplete our own resources. We'll deplete what's in our cup, trying to fulfill other people, hoping that somebody else will see us and do the same for us. But guess what? That's not healing. That's not healthy. Sometimes you have to say no. Sometimes you just got to say no because I need to prioritize me, because I need to deal with me with this issue. And by me saying no, a lot of times saying no is getting to a space where you overcoming that fear of saying yes, because yes have become your coping mechanism. Saying yes have become your coping mechanism. And we got to be careful with that, because when we do that, it is not a good place to be. It's not a good place to be, right? one of the things we truly need to understand is that you cannot, watch this, you cannot give somebody something, you cannot give to others and expect them to give something back to you that you are afraid to address yourself. And a lot of times we do that. We do that in relationships. We try to love somebody in the language or in the way that we need them or want them to love us, right? And then we get frustrated because we never seem to get that back from them. But the reality is we cannot, that's our own fault for trying to feel like what we're gonna expect others to give to us, something that we haven't even communicated. Not only that we haven't communicated, it's unrealistic for us to expect ourselves or other people to see or know what we want when we are too afraid to even acknowledge it, address it, and communicate what we need from them. That's on us. Kevin said that. She said, my wife and I have conversation about saying no to others. We have to keep ourselves healthy and learn that there are good no's, and we don't have to feel bad about saying no sometimes. No, you don't. Brother, listen, no way, Jose, you don't have to feel bad at all about saying no. My mom said that. She said, if I keep sharing my coffee out of my cup, soon all the coffee will be gone and I didn't get to enjoy any. Yes, and I'm not telling people to be selfish. No, but I'm talking to people about really dealing with the reality of who you are and where you at in that space, right? But they're saying overcoming the fear of dealing with yourself, right? Many of us are afraid to deal with ourselves because we just have become so comfortable with running from ourselves. We invested so much time, energy, and effort into building a lie, building a false reality, that we are afraid to address it and deal with it because we don't feel like we don't want to lose that investment. And that investment was we invested in the wrong thing. We didn't invest in really getting to ourselves or getting to the reality or getting back to our why, right? We are afraid to deal with ourselves because most of the times what we do is we develop these coping mechanisms and we develop these things to where we suppress all of this stuff and we just go on like it doesn't bother us, but we don't want to go back and deal with reality of us because that will force us to have to face ourselves in the mirror. And facing ourselves in the mirror is scary when you've been lying to yourself the whole time. When you've been lying to yourself the whole time. And that's something, right, that we have to say, you know what? Hey, that's on me. And the thing about it is this, right? One of the easiest things to do with dealing with yourself is first accepting and acknowledging that you've lied to yourself. And when you accept it and lie to yourself about the situation, just say, hey, man, I know, look, I've been putting this off. I've been scared to deal with it because I've been scared to deal with the consequences. But what happens is when we try to feel like we're putting off consequences, what we're doing is our reality right now is full of chaos and dysfunction that has become normal to us because that's what we dealt with. That's what we've become accustomed to, right? So the biggest thing we can do is just say, you know what? Nah, I'm gonna let that thing go. I'm gonna address it. And this is the thing. This is the thing about it. Once we finally address it and get the courage to deal with ourselves, what we will realize is the thing that we were fearful of in the first place wasn't that big of a deal to overcome. And we could have easily overcome it. But many of us, we spend years and years and years and years carrying that thing because we were too afraid to address it and face ourselves. And that's why we need the time to deal with ourselves. We need the time to deal with ourselves. Miss Geraldine said, oops, I am my own worst enemy. I need to be delivered. Deliver me. Well, Miss Geraldine, I guarantee you, we all deal with it. And I struggle with saying no and getting to that space. And that's why I like talking about it. I like having open and honest and transparent conversations about it because I feel I'm not the only person that deal with it or have to deal with it or have ever dealt with it. That's why I feel that it's imperative to have these conversations that we are having and out in the open so somebody can watch it and see it and be like, you know what? I can relate to that. I can definitely relate to that. And my mom said, not dealing with yourself is continuing to hold up the facade of being someone else. And our fear to deal with us actually frees us. Yes, yes, yes. And listen, this is the We spend so much time, many of us spend so much time putting on a mask, and especially with social media, but just in general in life, we put on a mask of public perception and what we want others to perceive us as. And we won't even deal with the reality of who we are. And what happens is we get people in our lives, in our close circle, who have basically become enablers of your behavior because they tolerate that behavior, even though they may not like it, but they tolerate it and they become enablers of their behavior. So you begin to, in your own bubble, you create your own security blanket of where these people around you will enable certain behaviors and not force you or hold you accountable of dealing with this here. And you know that you know the stuff that you're dealing with, you know the stuff that you're running from. But as long as you can portray this on social media, as long as you can portray this to other people that you got it together, you feel like you're good. But inside, you're crying out for help. You're crying out for help. And there's so many that has dealt with that. There's so many that deal with that on a day-to-day basis. And that's why it's so imperative that we overcome the fear, overcome that fear, right? And that the fear of overcoming the fear of dealing with yourself, a lot of that fear is fueled by the fear of being exposed for being a fraud, because many times we didn't say, hey, this is just who I am. I'm just who I am. I'm just this way, right? When we know that's not who we really are. We're that way because most of the time, a lot of us, we're that way because that's a coping mechanism and a protection mechanism to try to keep others from hurting us from a trauma or coming close to seeing our vulnerabilities, or us being vulnerable in the things we may have been hurt with before. And many of us, we spend that time and we just become so uber aggressive or over aggressive, and we try to overcompensate in so many different areas. And we get so, oh, I got this and I'm a boss in this, I'm doing that, and I got it going on here and there. And we running ourselves crazy. But then we are still too afraid to sit down and just deal with the little boy or the little girl who's waiting to be seen. We won't do that. My mama said, my Lord, God wants to bless us, but because we have not dealt with our fear of acceptance of who we are, that the blessings don't know who we are. Yeah. They can't find us. They can't find us. The things that have our name and our assignment on, they can't find us. One of the things that I've come to know with it just on my life is just getting to a space to where I'm comfortable, but more comfortable with the reality of me. And the reality of me is sometimes I'm not going to be where I feel like I should be. Like there's a lot of areas in my life I'm like, dang, I could be further along with this in this area. But then when I sit down and I face myself and I don't run from myself, I'm able to address exactly where that's at. I'm able to address, hey, I'm not where I'm at because of this decision or this thought process. So I now, because I face myself and I'm not running from myself, I can develop a plan to address it or to come out of it, right? Or I can sit down and continue to act like I'm still good and then be lying to myself and find myself the same way 15 years from now, right? And the reality is, only thing a lot of times facing yourself, overcoming that fear is simply raising your hand and say, hey, I need help. Say, I need help in this area. And a lot of times we don't like to act, we don't like to, we maintain in that fear. A lot of times we will stay in prison by fear because we are too prideful to say, hey, I need help. I need assistance. I need somebody to help me in this area. Hey, I need somebody to give me some tips in this area. I need something else. I need a way forward. I need some assistance. And we don't like saying that. So we will stay stuck in prison in that state of dysfunction and live our lives and become normal. That dysfunction become normalized to us. But all the time we're frustrated in that because we know deep down inside it's something better for our lives. We always know it, but then we feel like, dang, and we settle for dysfunction because we are too fearful to face ourselves and to address ourselves and address the reality of who we are. That doesn't mean that it's something wrong. That just means that, hey, I know that in these areas in my life, this is areas where I know I need to put some time, energy, and effort into growing in so that it doesn't impact me the same way that it used to. That's all that is. That right there is what that is. That right there is what is a reality that can be helpful to us. That's a reality that we all can look at in the sense of just dealing with ourselves. And I would tell you, man, when we get to a space to where we're comfortable and get more comfortable, comfortable with dealing with ourselves, that's when we truly can maximize our interactions or relationships with other people. Because when we refuse to deal with ourselves, most of the time we end up projecting our insecurities on other people and expect other people to cater to and compromise for our own dysfunctions, all because we are too afraid to deal with it. And we develop this mindset like, oh, they just don't like me, or they just don't want to accept me as I am. No, you need to deal with yourself. Now you need to deal with it. Other people aren't responsible for that. You are responsible for that, right? You are the one solely responsible for dealing with the reality of you. But if you continue to be afraid, if you continue to run from the reality of you, right, that is fear. And you're allowing that fear to hold you in prison in the moment, where you can overcome that by just simply saying, I'm going to face myself. I'm going to face myself. Period. And it's easy to do, but it's hard sometimes it can seem hard when we are scared to face ourselves. Mama said, God has a blessing just for me, but I must be me and not the projected self, my Lord. That is true. God has a blessing with your name on it, right? And your name is your identity, and your identity is rooted into you. Like this is the thing. So many of us, we get frustrated because we feel like we have to be perfect. And we feel like we compare ourselves to other people, and we look at other people's strengths. And watch this, especially in today's time with social media and all this stuff, we see everybody's strengths. And we look at people projecting their strengths, or the projection of their strength, of what they got going on, and they got this and they got that, and they didn't achieve this and they did that, right? But the reality is you're comparing yourself to somebody else that you're the only person that you should be comparing yourself to. You can find other people that you can emulate, other people that you can like things that they have done, and you can be inspired by them. You can be motivated by them, but stop judging yourself on other people, because nobody else that has ever been existed in the history of this world, of the universe, can be you. So maximize you being you. Like, don't be in competition with other people. Don't worry about other people. Just worry about yourself. Worry about yourself. And I will say this, man, I work in a competitive environment, uber competitive environment, to where your potential for promotion is genuinely based off of you being compared to your peers, right? So you be compared to your peers. So everybody is you work with people, and how it is everybody on the same level are rated against each other in the organization. So they rate you on what they call an order of merit list. If you're number 1 through 10, hey, they got to rate you 1 through 10. Now, if I go in and I'm always trying to be number 1, right? I just may be number 1 in this situation, not because I'm better. I just may be better in this situation, right? But that doesn't mean that I spend all of my time, energy, and effort trying to sabotage others. I take pride in just focusing on me, because guess what? That other person may be naturally better at doing something than me. They may be naturally better at being organized better than me. They may be naturally better at doing something else better than me. But if I focus on trying to be like them instead of maximizing who I am, then I'm really not doing myself. I'm doing myself an injustice. I just go in with the mindset of willing to learn, willing to share, right? And willing to be a part of a team. I could care less about the other stuff. And I've created that mindset, and it's really been helpful. But a lot of other people, when they're concerned about this other stuff or where they're going to fall, people do all types of crazy stuff. They do all types of crazy stuff because everything is a competition to them, because they're comparing themselves to somebody. I'm not comparing them. I'm not comparing myself to nobody. I'm comparing myself to who I am, because God has gifted me with unique skill sets, unique abilities. And guess what? I intend to maximize what he gave me. Yes, there's still some stuff I got to work on about me, and I know that. And I'm not naive to that, and I'm not ashamed of that. I'm not ashamed, because nobody is perfect, man. And that's the thing about it. That's the thing. We have to get to a space where we are comfortable with knowing the fact, and not just knowing, but accepting the fact that we're not perfect. And with us, our imperfections, there's going to be some stuff that we're going to have to deal with about ourselves. So don't create this false narrative that we got to or feel like we got to be perfect. That's why a lot of times we don't want to deal with ourselves, because we don't want to lose this false sense of being perfect. Man, I am nowhere near perfect. And I'm being honest about that. I'm nowhere near perfect as a father. I'm nowhere near perfect as a man. I'm nowhere near perfect as a brother, as an uncle. I have my shortcomings. And I know that, right? I know that. I'm not in denial of that. But one thing I am is I've gotten to a space where I'm comfortable enough to say, you know what? I need to deal with me. And I got to a space where I've learned to set time to the side so that I can deal with me. Not just, oh, I'm gonna push through it. See, because many of us, we feel like as we're gonna keep ourselves so busy to the point to where we don't have to deal with ourselves. But you can't out-busy yourself from dealing with the reality of who you are. Either you're going to run yourself ragged, but then you still going to have to deal with you. And if you don't address you, guess who got to deal with it? Your kids, your spouse, those people close to you. They got to deal with the dysfunction, your dysfunction. And we wonder how generational curses get passed on. We wonder how things and certain behaviors continue to get passed on in families. It's because we will refuse to address and deal with the reality of being fearful of dealing with us. Dealing with, hey, why do I have this attitude? Dealing with the fact of, hey, why am I this way? Dealing with the fact of, why do I always feel this way, right? And then once you start getting to the bottom of it, set that time aside so that you can deal with and address you. You can deal with and address you. You can deal with and address yourself. Set that time aside, right? And that time look different for different people. That time may be you setting up some time to go meditate. That time maybe you going to counseling, right? That time maybe you talking to people and overcoming a lot of stuff. That time maybe you trying to have conversation. A lot of times it's found in you forgiving yourself and forgiving others so that you can move on. And you know that's a good thing, but hey, we have to learn, right, to overcome the fear, like overcoming the fear of dealing with yourself. Because the hardest thing we're going to have to do in our lives is deal with the reality of us. That's the hardest thing. It's harder than being a parent. It's harder than being married. It's harder than getting a PhD. It's harder than splitting atoms. I'm telling you that right now. Is dealing with yourself from a realistic perspective. And those people who learn to deal with themselves, right, they tend to have a much productive and fulfilling life. Those who learn to deal with the reality of who they are tend to have a much more productive life because they don't waste time investing in the stuff, worrying about fulfilling a projection of the reality of who they are instead of walking in the reality of who they are. And when you walk in the reality of who you are, guess what? You the one that have power over your life. Because when you don't walk in the reality of who you are, you're forfeiting your power to other people's opinion about who you are. And you deserve better than that. You deserve better than that. You deserve 1,000% better than that. So, man, I just thank you guys so much. I hope this was helpful. Make sure you go and you like my social media stuff on social media on YouTube at the Conversation 98, on Instagram, the Conversation 98, Twitter at 98 Conversation, Facebook, the Conversation 98, and TikTok at the Conversation _98. I thank you guys so much. Make sure you guys share this. Hope this was helpful. Hope this was helpful to somebody. I just want to leave you guys with this nugget, man. Listen, the best thing that you can do in your life is get the courage to say, I'm going to deal with me. I'm not going to blame nobody else. I'm not looking for an excuse. I am going to deal with the reality of who I am, no matter how ugly it may look, no matter how much I may not want to deal with it. but I'm going to make a conscious decision to choose to deal with the reality of who I am. And the reason why I'm going to choose to deal with the reality of who I am is simply because I know that I deserve better in my life. And in order for me to experience better, I have to remove myself out of my own way. And in order to remove myself out of my own way, I got to first acknowledge that that's me and then be willing and set the time aside to deal with me. So you guys have a great and wonderful evening. Miss Geraldine, thank you. You're welcome. And Priscilla, I'm glad that it was helpful to you. You guys have a wonderful and blessed week. God bless.